Hey, fantastic authors. Today I am going to talk about a few legal questions that writers seem to bring up again and again. I am Bryn Donovan. During the day I work in a publishing house. I am not a lawyer, however. I am an acquiring editor and I am an author by night. Go ahead and subscribe. It is really nice to connect with you here. Now, if you're doing the blank page to final draft program, you are working on the second half of your novel. You're trying to hit those weekly word count goals. I hope everything's going great. Keep it up. Keep going strong. Let's get into these legal questions. The big thing that I hear writers ask over and over again is, can I use song lyrics in my novel? A lot of beginning authors especially really want to do this. They want to use those lyrics to add emotion to the scene. For instance, they're writing about a badass character driving really fast down the highway and he's blasting a rock song, and so they want the lyrics of that song to be in the scene. Or they're writing a really romantic scene and the couple is slow dancing and they want those romantic lyrics as part of the scene. So, is it okay to put those lyrics in there? Usually, no. The one exception is that if it's a really old song, for instance, it's like an old traditional Christmas carol, like "O Come All You Faithful" or some of those like that, or if it's a really old folk song, then you can put the lyrics in the story. When I wrote my novella, Wicked Garden, I put the lyrics from Pretty Polly, which is an old folk song, in the story, and I liked having the lyrics in there because this is a song that sounds really romantic, but it's also really creepy and he kills her, and that was good for this horror romance story that I was writing. Actually, a lot of old folk songs can be really creepy. If you've ever heard the song "In the Pines," which is covered by Nirvana on their Unplugged album, that song is about 150 years old, and that's a really creepy song. There's a lot of creepy lullabies out there. So you can take a lot of inspiration from things in the public domain. But if it's a contemporary song, you are not allowed to use contemporary song lyrics in your story. So those rights belong to A, the songwriter who came up with them, and B, the music publisher, usually part of the music company, that published them and put a lot of money, invested a lot of money into promoting that song, which is why you know about it in the first place. Right? Now, theoretically, you could write to both the songwriter and the publisher and try to get rights from both of them. Now, in the past, I have worked on products that use licensed songs, and I can tell you those permissions are very hard to get and they are very expensive. It's really better to stay away from it completely. If you're trying to get traditionally published, agents and editors, if they see a bunch of song lyrics in your story, they're going to want to set it aside because they're not going to go after all those rights. It would take forever and they don't have the budget. All right. Let me try to make you feel a little bit better about the fact that you can't use song lyrics, however. A lot of times, it's not what you want in your scene anyway, and there's a few reasons for that. Sometimes if you talk about a popular band, a contemporary band, or a contemporary song, and the reader isn't familiar with it, it can be a little bit alienating to that reader. You're saying, I know this cool band that you don't, right? And it puts them out of it a little. Or sometimes they do know the song, they do know the band, and they hate the song or the band. Musical tastes vary quite a bit. And so if they think that the song is stupid, they might start to feel like your story is stupid too, and you don't want that to happen. Finally, a lot of contemporary song lyrics, not all of them, it really depends on the song, but a lot of contemporary song lyrics, once the vocal isn't there, once the instrumentation isn't there, it can be a little bit flat on the page. So what do you want to do anyway? You want to take inspiration from that song, from the energy of that song, but you're going to have to create that same emotion in your own words, on the page. You're a writer, so you can do this. So if you have your scene where the badass character is driving down the highway, you can write about the wind in his hair, you can write about the ruts under his wheels, you can write about the thoughts racing through his brain, the adrenaline flowing through him. You're going to get a great scene like that, and it's going to be more effective than if you just put the song lyrics in there. However, One thing you can put in that scene is the title of the song he's listening to. That's right, song titles are not copyrightable, and you can put as many of them as you want into your novel. If you've ever wondered why there are so many movies and books with the same names as songs, that's why, because they're not copyrightable. So do whatever you want there. Again, you want to make sure that you're not being off-putting by using a bunch of song titles that don't mean anything to the reader. However, a lot of song titles have a really nice ring to them, and they can work whether or not the reader is familiar with them. Another thing people ask me about a lot is whether it's okay to use brands and companies in a novel, and the answer is yes. So if you want your character to go to Starbucks and you want them to be wearing a Ralph Lauren sweater, you can absolutely do that. Now I have a few cautions here. First of all, when you're using brand names and companies like that, you want to make sure that they are things that all of your readers have heard of. Otherwise, sometimes they'll get a little frustrated. I always caution against using too many pop culture references like TV shows, the names of actors, etc. And the reason is that your novel can become dated very quickly. If that company folds 2 months out after your novel comes out, or the actor does something terrible, right after your novel comes out, that's going to be a real drag. So you can minimize that risk there and make sure your novel doesn't get dated and stale too quickly by keeping those pop culture references to a minimum. Now, the other thing about using actual brands and companies is you can't make up lies about them, because then they can sue you, or they might, So for instance, if you have Starbucks and you say the character thinks that Starbucks coffee tastes like ashes, well, that's okay actually, because that's an opinion. I personally love Starbucks coffee, but that's okay to have in your novel. However, if you write a novel in which all the Starbucks across the country are adding ashes to their coffee, then Starbucks might get mad at you and sue you. So you don't want to do that. The last question a lot of people have is whether or not they can write about fictional characters. Again, if the characters are in the public domain, then you can. But if they're not, then you can't. So you can't write, for instance, a novel about the childhood of Batman, because Batman belongs to DC Comics. It's not yours. That being said, we have in our contemporary era a great tradition of writing fan fiction. Now, fan fiction is technically copyright infringement, all right? But because people aren't making money off of it, because they're just uploading it to places like Archive of Your Own for other fans to enjoy, mostly authors and copyright holders don't mind. There are a few authors out there who really hate fan fiction. I know I would be honored and thrilled if someone wrote fan fiction about my stories. Anyway, so that's usually fine, and you're not going to get in trouble there. It's an interesting thing because with 50 Shades of Grey, of course, that book started out as fan fiction for the novel Twilight. The story, the characters, the world, everything changed enough that it was okay to publish that novel as an original work. Or at least as far as I know, Ms. Meyer did not sue the author of 50 Shades of Grey. The other thing I want to say here is you can find a lot of great inspiration from folk tales, fairy tales, and mythology. Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, a lot of that story was very much inspired by Norse mythology. In fact, if you read those old sagas, it's kind of like reading Lord of the Rings if everybody was a murdering psychopath, right? But he really was inspired by that world. In the book that I'm writing right now, The Requiem Moon, I am including a reworking of one of my favorite Greek myths. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but I'm taking inspiration from it, very direct inspiration, and putting it in this contemporary paranormal world. And so those are a lot of fun to play with, and I have a couple of links below to blog posts that give you lots of storylines from mythology, from ancient stories, and from Victorian novels that you can steal and play around with and appropriate and do whatever you want with them. So I hope you enjoy those. So those are some answers to some very common questions about what's legal and what isn't as you're writing a novel. If you have other questions, go ahead and ask below. I will try to get back to you in the comments section. Go ahead and like the video if you enjoyed it. Give it the thumbs up. If you're doing blank page to final draft, good luck. Have a great writing week. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Take care of yourselves. Happy writing.